Hey everyone, Brendan Anthony here. Another little video on my book, Music Production Cultures. This is the second video of the series, and today I'm going to just dial into a couple of the areas I discussed in the introduction section of the book. So whilst you have a read, we can have a chat about it here. Please throw any comments or questions you have in the comments or questions sections, and I'll be very happy to answer them for the group collective. Okay, so the introduction section kind of sets up, the higher educational platform of how music production or popular music production education is being facilitated, and how we should think about things. And I always think that often there's a danger in considering this from the institutional perspective. I've worked at many open days at universities and talked to many aspiring students and their very attentive parents about and had to communicate with them about why their child should come to study music, and as a part of that popular music production at the institution I work for. And it's a really interesting experience. I found that that's handled in three levels. My level is that I just want to provide an enriching experience for the student where they might gather some knowledge, they learn about themselves, they garner like an understanding for where they may want to be or do in 5 years. But at the end of it, that enriching experience has been enlightening to them, and they come out at the end a better person for society. And that's what I think university education should be for. If you ask the students what they want, they just want to know all the cool stuff. Teach me the cool stuff that I don't know. Teach me how to twiddle all these knobs here on this expensive piece of gear. Teach me how to sound like Billie Eilish or Ed Sheeran or the Foo Fighters or whoever. Can you make me sound like them? They just want to know all the cool stuff. Teach me all that cool stuff. Teach me all that cool stuff. It's interesting that the reality is I actually think that learning is way more powerful than teaching, especially when it comes to pop music production. But the funny thing is that the parents, they don't really hear much of that, either of those two, because most of the parents just want to know, hey, how is this going to help my child get a job or have financial security and have a career in friggin' music? And rightly so. So when considering how we should best facilitate an education in popular music production, we've got to understand what people are wanting within that education, what they are considering they'd like to get from that education, and how should we consider those opinions when designing pedagogy. Yet again, in the introduction section of the book, I had a great chat to many educators, Jay Hodson from America, Simon Zagorski-Thomas, a good colleague of mine from London, and we talked about universities, colleges, the higher education behemoth within which we all work. And that was an enlightening discussion. And it's interesting because, these videos are all obviously my opinion, which has been formulated from research. But there is hierarchy and elitism in higher education. There's no doubt that it is. Various institutions feel that they are compared to other institutions or forms of, you have universities, you have colleges, you have professional schools, and they all look at education in different ways. I spoke to some friends from Europe, and they talked about how various institutions develop thinkers and others develop practitioners, and they have opinions on which is better. And, in the first video I mentioned, I think we need them all. Yet again, we're thinking about the experience from the educational, the institutional aspect. What do we want to do? I don't think you can consider what we should be doing as educators unless you unpack what is for the betterment of the student, or may I say, for the betterment of the musician. I think if we look at them as students too often and not as fellow musicians, equals. Some of you are gasping with air right now. What, you want me to think of a student as an equal? Well, yeah, I do believe we need to think of students, musicians, as equals. We call them students because that's their collective, but I treat my students as equals, musicians. They know as much about modern music, if not more, about modern music than I do. Because I spend my whole time now in an educational facility. I'm not making as much music as I used to. I wish I was, but I'm not. So yeah, that's an interesting perspective. And you know, in many institutions are trying to be more inclusive and more having more diverse cohorts. And at meetings with regards to these things, they say, oh, you know, how can we go out into community and get more inclusive cohorts to our educational programs? And I'm like, you're missing the whole point here, bro. They're not coming because of the program. I did some interviews with some colleagues from Canada and America, and the research showed that many students studying popular music production were doing so from within classical degrees. They can't even study popular music. They're doing pop music production within a Bachelor of Classical Music because their facility doesn't have a program that allows them musical freedom to do popular music. Some of the students aren't even studying music. They're studying electronic science degrees and doing music technology courses in where they can work with DAWs and make music. So I actually think the problem exists within the pedagogical frameworks we're supplying and how societal designs of what a university or college should do or has done in the past is influencing what we're doing now. Popular music evolves every year. Things change. The music changes. We get influences. My son's got a mullet right now. I know I've still got a mullet. I had a mullet in the 80s. You know, he's got a mullet, which means it's come back. God knows why, but it has. It's a sensational mullet. I might even post a little picture of him right now. God love him. Good on you, Aussie. So, you know, we have to evolve. Our programs have to evolve and be intuitive and instinctive as popular music does. So my institution is a conservatoire. And if you know, conservatoire models are so embedded within Western art music, classical music, and rightly so, because classical music needs to be educated in a very different way compared to popular music. But we need the freedom within our facilities so that educational experience can be it can be self or student centered. My institution is doing some great reforms with regards to Bachelor of Music redesign to make it more inclusive, more diverse, more collaborative between the various classical, jazz, music technology, popular music, whatever, so that they're just musicians who have goals and aspirations. And so I think we need to be placing professional pressure or advocacy in making our programs more attractive to inspire students to want to come to be involved in these programs, not try and find students and go out and get them and put them in our programs. Our programs need to be attractive to the musicians in the world because of how they are facilitated. And we need to change that. They need to be around modern music making with specific regards to popular music production. We need to be teaching modern applications. Now, that doesn't mean that we still don't need to teach traditional ways of making music, because I think there's great utility in how music was made in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 50s, 40s, whatever, because then students can use those methods as influence when there's genre blurring. There are no genres now. Genres are blurred. Genres are just domains of knowledge that you can use in your music making. So we need to be designing our pedagogies And students should be able to come and do rap and hip hop, and it should be around the social and cultural affordances of our students that our pedagogy aligns to embellish and encourage their abilities in who they are and the music they want to do. And that's quite hard because it means we need to innovate all the time. And if you're innovating all the time, you need to make changes. And universities are monolithic behemoths that are extremely slow in facilitating change because of all the friggin' red tape we have to go through with regards to making change. And that's incredibly frustrating. But as innovative educators, I think we need to be bold. I've come across so many educators who are still teaching the same way they taught in 1999, 2000. My God, still teaching acoustic recording as the main area of music production. So you can sense my frustration in that. We have to remember also that producers are now producing their own music. I've said to you earlier, any musician can be a producer. So they can produce their own music. They can produce others, which has been the way of a producer for a long time, or they can co-produce music with others. So the culture of recording, the music production culture, can be one of those three. And so it can be quite diverse. And so we need to we need to encourage students to become flexible and intuitive so that they can move through these spaces of modern music making when they leave university. And our pedagogies need to allow the freedom for the students to experience these in acoustic, electronic, and online realms and engaging with AI. There's this fear factor. This isn't in the book. I'm sorry. AI became a much bigger deal just after I wrote the book, but it's in my next book. And my take with AI is it is what it is, and it's going to be around. And it's just like when the DAW come around and many people jumped up and down and said, oh, I'm never going to mix in the box because nothing sounds as good as my analog console. And I had one of them. There was one right here. And I was wrong. Because DAWs and the converters, everything, it sounds great. And you mix through the technology you use anyway. All this emphasis on tech friggin'nology. So yeah, we need to facilitate modern music production education, which incorporates traditional aspects. I still use an analog tape machine in my classes because by using an analog tape machine, my students go, wow, that's cool. They get inspired. How do we use this? They get inspired. Oh, wow, that does that. Wow. So if you get them to have that experience of, wow, this does this and it has this influence on my music sounds this way because of what I could do with that technology, they start thinking, well, what if I use that technology? What if I did that technology? How's that going to? So they realize that creative practice shapes their music in different ways. So it's not about just doing what is current. It's about opening the students' eyes to being intuitive, being instinctive, and enabling that within them. So learning music production has to be a practical and social experience to discuss those things with students. And this is difficult to facilitate in higher education facilities that govern within certain frameworks. And I empower you to do everything you can to make your classes more inclusive, more diverse, so that students can work on the music they want to work on within a learning environment, an enriching learning environment. I think that one of the greatest problems we have with getting students to want to come to study popular music production within, say, a conservatoire is entry requirements. We hold auditions for students. You must come and play 3 pieces on an instrument that we can then, and we select students currently. Institutions will select students so they fill ensemble places in the orchestra or in the popular music ensembles. We need 5 drummers, we need 5 bass players, we need 5 guitarists, we need 10 vocalists, and that's our 25 students. Well, what about someone who plays a didgeridoo, who writes rap and programs beats within the DAW? No, they don't fill any places in acoustic ensembles, so they don't get entry. What about students who can't read music but can program complex musical works within the DAW? Our entry requirements need to value the musicality and performance affordances of our students, which are different to what they used to be. Students do not need to be able to read music, and it's a value system. Like if you can't sight read, you're not a musician, because if you're playing by ear, that's not real. Well, that's bullshit. Music is music. Many popular musicians can't read music. They understand chord shapes. They understand progressions. They understand modes. Some of them don't. Some of them just do it all by ear. But that makes them what they are. You take a classical music, now you take a popular music and put them in the classical realm, they'll struggle. Similarly, take a classical music person and put them in a popular music world, as many of us producers out there have done, got cellists or violinists or whatever to come play on a pop record, say, oh, can you just improvise on over that G minor? Can you just play? Can you do that for us? And the terror, shock, horror in their eyes. Can you write it down for me, please? No, and sometimes I've grabbed the violin off them and go, it's dee, 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 dee. But they're used to reading. Now, there's no hierarchy there. You say that to a popular musician, they'll go, oh, yeah, what's that? They'll work it out. Boom, yep, there it is. It's just different. There's no value. There's no hierarchy. And our entry requirements to our degree programs need to value all the different affordances, performative affordances. Students are using launch pads, students are using controllers to trigger beats in Ableton and stuff like that, and samples. That's performativity, that's musicality. That person should have the ability to come and study music at a higher institution, higher education institution. They should be able to get into university, and currently not many of them can, especially not where I come from. And from what I gathered in my book, thank you to all the educators who helped me with this, it seems very current that due to social status, due to musical knowledge or performativity abilities in classical understandings, students don't get in. And that's a travesty. So I want to thank you for listening to this second video, a little bit of a rant. The videos will be way more me than the book. The book's quite academic. If you read the preface, that's more me. And this, I am currently writing a second book, which is more relaxed. I will post another video on chapter 1, chapter 2, etc., on various elements of the book. And yet again, I welcome any comments you have. This is really just an ongoing discussion, this video series, to get the book and the idea behind the book about developing a foundation of practice for popular music production pedagogy around the globe. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do it this way. That foundation of practice needs to be understood. What do we need to consider as greater concepts within our educational approaches? Oh, yeah, they're doing that. Music production cultures in Australia. We are placing students within music production cultures that consider the social, musical, the affordances, cultural affordances of their students as important design aspects of our pedagogy. Now, that will be different in Queensland, Australia, compared to Boston and Berkeley. But the music production cultures bit is in commonality. And these are the kind of things I really think are important for us to align our pedagogical efforts for the betterment of the students. It's got nothing to do with us. It's all about the students. It's all about the future music makers of the world. I didn't get that education. I'm assuming if you're watching this, maybe you didn't either. And our job as educators, or if you're an aspiring student and you're watching this, your educator's job is to not teach you how they used to make music. It's to help empower you and inspire you within your realm of music making. Thanks for watching. Great to be here. So, very grateful if you're watching. Please whack a comment in there. I'd love to have a chat with some people about any ideas. Look after yourselves. Go hard or go home. Take care. See you later.